Hey guys, welcome. This is SEC Fanatics preseason preliminary YouTube exclusive. This is the segment of SEC Fanatic where we take a look at one SEC team leading up to the 2018 college football season. This week's team that we're going to be taking a look at is South Carolina. But first, before we get started, a reminder, go check out our main podcast. That's got a lot more SEC news, interviews, and just a lot more stuff. And I think that would really benefit you guys if you guys like the SEC. You can check it out at SEC Fanatics YouTube page here where you're watching it, or on iTunes or the Stitcher app. Links for those are going to be in the description, so should be real easy. Just after you're done watching this, go ahead and click down and see some of our other content. But again, back to South Carolina. South Carolina in 2017 went 9-4, 5-3 in the SEC. They kind of had an interesting dynamic. Early in the season, they lost to Kentucky at home, and then later in the season, they ended their season with a huge note, with a huge victory over Michigan that really got separated there in the fourth quarter. When I went back and watched this, a lot of people said these guys have the ability to contend for the SEC East. And when I first went back and watched footage on them, I was kind of confused because the South Carolina team that I was watching did not look like someone who can contend with Georgia. And the big reason for that is because South Carolina, to me, had a lot of issues with technicality. And what I mean by that is South Carolina has a lot of players with great skill, but where I saw them lacking is in the ability of, like I said, technicality, getting offensive linemen getting their hands where they need to be, defensive linemen getting low enough, and just hand placement. Quarterback Jake Bentley, who's from the town that I'm in, Opelika, whoop whoop. Quarterback making the right reads, putting the ball where it needs to be, wide receivers running their routes right. Just little technical stuff that makes a team elite and makes a team good. That's what Georgia has that South Carolina did not have last year, and that's why I feel like South Carolina was so inconsistent. They relied on making those big athletic plays, but when they couldn't make them, they kind of fell short. If South Carolina can take that step and get some technicality, they're going to be good to go. So they return quarterback Jake Bentley, and that's huge for a South Carolina team who's looking to contend for the SEC East. They also return all of their top rushers. They lose tight end Hurst, and yes, that does hurt. He was a very big production guy, very reliable for Jake Bentley. But all the other top receivers are returning, including Deebo Samuels. Now, if you were a South Carolina fan, you know that Deebo Samuels went down with an injury very early on, and South Carolina very dearly missed him. South Carolina really had a lot of injuries. They had a lot of injuries, especially to their offensive line as well, and they lose 3 out of 5 starters on the offensive line, so there's still some concern there. And even Will Muschamp admitted that at SEC Media Days. He admitted that their starting talent is great, but you got to watch out for later in the season when players start getting hurt. The talent below him, the depth chart is talented at the top, but not so much beneath, kind of like LSU that we were talking about last week. They do also return 4 out of their top 10 defenders, and so that's a pretty big deal for them as well. It's not great, it's not bad either. It's okay, but again, 6 out of your top 10 defenders are coming back. The big deal is talent at the top. Where is it below that? So that'll be interesting to see for South Carolina later in the season. The good thing is they get Georgia early in the season when they won't be so banged up. And so that will be very helpful for them to try to contend with a very physical Georgia team. Also, my personal questions is how will South Carolina, how early will they be able to become technically sound? Those things that I was talking about, how early will they be able to move from just being those people who makes big athletic plays into becoming a team that is consistent and can use that skill consistently? It'll be interesting if they can get that done really early on. This summer, this early fall in the first couple of games before Georgia, I think they'll be all set for that key Georgia matchup. As far as predictions go for South Carolina in 2018, I'm going to be using SG1 Sports, and they predict them to go 8-4 with wins over Coastal Carolina, Marshall, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Missouri, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Chattanooga, and with losses to Georgia, Texas A&M, Florida, and Clemson. The good thing for South Carolina is that a lot of those games are 50-50 games. A lot of those games are, maybe we could lean one way or the other. And so South Carolina running the board is a possibility. South Carolina dropping a few of those games. Maybe it does go a little more than 8-4. But just to try not to get your hopes too far up, we'll say 8-4, just to kind of say that that's kind of our expectation. That's your bar. Let's try to beat it. And it's very realistic for South Carolina to go better than 8-4. I'll put it that way. South Carolina is probably one of the best equipped as far as skill goes to contend with Georgia in the SEC East. Now, whether they will or won't will be decided on the football field come early this fall. But either way, good luck to South Carolina. Again, take a look at our podcast, SEC Fanatic, on YouTube, iTunes, or Stitcher. God bless. Thanks for your time. Thanks for watching. And this has been SEC Fanatics YouTube exclusive preseason preliminary.